Okay, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the State of Unreal for AEC. My name's Rob Harrison. I'm the Business Development Director for AEC at Epic Games. I've been at Epic for about 6 years. Prior to that, I worked at Autodesk for 12 years on the AEC team with Revit and Navisworks and those products, and also on the media and entertainment side with 3ds Max and Maya and that side. So come with quite a lot of sort of 3D software experience.
Yep, and my name is Simon Blakeney. I'm a technical account manager at Epic Games. So I help our customers with the technical adoption of the Epic ecosystem. Primarily, I support the AEC industry, but also fashion, automotive, and a bit of M&E as well. My background is that I come from 12 years experience at Overarp & Partners, where I led the LiDAR scanning capabilities.
So we thought we'd start with a little quiz. So I won't necessarily ask for, well, maybe, let's shout out. What's the top one? Sadly not. Oh God, what have I done now? There we go, right. Actionable insights, I'll explain later. All right, the next one. Digital, nearly, digital things, I'll explain as well. And then the last one? No, more value. And obviously having a little bit of fun here, but what we're trying to explain in this presentation today is that there's value at every stage of a project. So if you invest in real-time assets early, you can benefit as the project progresses. You can also sometimes use those assets for things you hadn't even thought of at the beginning. When it comes to digital things, I think there's been in the market, people questioning what qualifies as a digital twin. We don't really care, to be honest. There's twins for transportation, there's twins for marketing, there's twins for, operations. So really, if you're doing something better than what you were doing before, you're progressing. So we're not worried if your digital twin doesn't necessarily tick all of the boxes that you see with these sort of industry standards. And of course, we want you to go away from here with some actionable insights that you can put into place when you get back to the office. So what we've tried to do is split this into 4 different project stages. So kind of the early stage planning and feasibility, so design, development and construction, configurators, sales and marketing, operations, digital things like that. Now we know that not the projects and the work you do doesn't necessarily fit into those categories, exactly. And in fact, some cases, your projects probably cover all 4 stages. That's fine. But we're just using this to kind of frame the different uses of Unreal Engine. So when it comes to the early stage, we're looking at things like feasibility studies. So, how can you quickly understand whether a scheme is even viable? In terms of urban design, things with Unreal and some of the connections to GIS content, you have the ability to stream in entire cities or even entire countries into Unreal and be able to use that data. And then you can connect also to things like Primavera or other scheduling software to be able to show, how things progress over time. And then of course, everyone wants to be able to get things through planning easier and quicker, and these tools can help do that. So we're going to play a selection of use cases here. So the top left is from a company called HNTB. This is a Kansas City levee project. And there were 17 miles of levees that needed to be upgraded to protect 30,000 residents from flood risk. Now, interestingly, the main kind of requirement for this, or to use the tools, was to be able to show that there wouldn't be a huge amount of disruption to the local rail services, rather than too much emphasis on the levees and stuff like that. So it was really about being able to show that the trains would still be able to operate seamlessly. The top right is a project from the UK. It's from the $100 billion HS2 project, which is a rail project connecting London to the north of England. And this is actually a ventilation and emergency access tunnel. The project was done in twin motion, and I think they've done a really, really good job. It was Grimshaw was the architect, and they've done a really good job at capturing the atmosphere of that part of England. And it's actually, a rural area, sort of upland rural area. So I think they've done a great job there. Is that? And then finally, the final one we're going to talk about is a project done by Pannoni. So Pannoni have been working with the Delaware River and Bay Authority, looking at implementing these dolphins to protect bridges from accidents. Now, some of you may remember what happened late in 2024. There was indeed an accident. So as you can imagine, the public scrutiny and media interest in the work that Pannoni are doing to protect the bridges from future accidents is suddenly, very much at the top of everyone's mind. So, they used cesium. They were able to show all the models in one place through these, high quality. I think that's, again, a really nice video that they put together there. And then Simon is now going to talk, I'm getting rather hot under the collar on stage here. Simon is now going to talk about a company called BeyondCAD, they created initially a product called Beyond Typicals, but more recently a product called Civil Engine, which is a transportation-focused product with a very simple UI, and it's making 3D visualization more accessible to the engineering and infrastructure community. And just to mention, we've seen a trend recently of people creating these bespoke softwares, and there's another company called GeoPogo that I wanted just to make a mention, who've created something called GeoPogo Cities, which is a great tool that kind of mixes geospatial data with 3D design tools. But Simon, are you going to talk a bit more about this one?
Sure. So a lot of the backbone of what they've done is developing their own bespoke tools on top of their core application. And they've done it in such a way that they can start to modify it for bespokely for individual customers. And the way they're able to do that is to harness the power of blueprints. Blueprints are very flexible. It's a visual scripting system. It's node-based in the interface. Very easy to plug and play different components together. It's actually easier to find blueprint developers than it is C++ developers, so that's another reason that it's favored. And we have this Epic snippet repository as well on the Epic Epic developer community sites. So what you can do there is go to the snippet area. You can search for anything that might be useful for you. It might be a repeatable process, such as bringing in an automation batch for something, and then you can copy that code. So there's a small copy full snippet button, and then you paste that into your blueprint graph in the Unreal Engine window. So hugely flexible system that we see being used across many, many of our projects. If you're more interested in this, go to the QR code. That takes you directly to the blueprints visual scripting documentation. Another trend that we see in the industry, especially for feasibility and planning applications, is streaming data into Unreal Engine. And there's a few big players, but one of the most prominent ones is Cesium. And we have a guy from Cesium in the room at the moment, if you'd like to introduce yourself later. But Cesium allows you to stream data into Unreal Engine on the fly. So if you imagine you have a city worth of information, you don't have to bring that all in as one import on an FBX. You can stream in based on the view of the individual player. And another solution is iTwin from Bentley Systems. With that, you can bring in entire BIM models. So if it's a full-scale power station, every single nut and bolt from that power station could be streamed into Unreal Engine, and then you have that flexibility and performance. And just a note, so this QR code will bring you to a tutorial that I wrote last year, and this shows you how to use Unreal Engine with Cesium, Google Photorealistic 3D tiles, and also VR with the Meta Quest 3 headsets, so you can see it as you move your head around. And finally, for this section, collaboration features. So Unreal Engine has some really highly sophisticated multiplayer functionality. The collab template, which is one of our templates out of the box, is an easy route into multiplayer aspects. Our background, we have Fortnite as an example. Fortnite supports 100 players per shard, per server. If you want to find more information about the collab templates, go to this QR code. It will take you to the documentation. It works over LAN networks and WAN networks. Multiple people can join in together You can embed your project data into it, and then you can take measurements, you can mark up, you can chat to each other. So it's a really good template to have a look at, and a lot of our customers will build entire applications on top of the collab template as well. Rob.
Okay, so that's the first section. It was quite infrastructure heavy, and actually, when we get to a later part, we'll do more that covers the sort of building side. It was just kind of the way that the projects came in. But the second section we're going to talk about, it covers really more the sort of design development area, design changes, decision making, being able to engage a wider team by using the tools. We're going to look at some construction examples, how you can show something digitally to reduce the concerns of disruption and reduce the risk of delays. I mentioned the phasing earlier. And then also we have an example that shows a connection to a manufacturing plant, so that when you design, and that's automatically sent to the factory, and I'll show you that project in a second. So the first one, the top left, is a project by HKS, architecture firm in the US, and they've been working with a medical device manufacturer to look at how they can make more appropriate medical equipment for someone living in a cramped and dirty kind of home. So how can they improve decision making and engagement using these tools to work with the medical device designers to provide more suitable solutions. The top right is a project by the Productivity Group in the Netherlands. And what they've done, as you can see here, we're actually at the bit where they're in the factory showing the porter cabins that will be shipped to site. But in a second, the video will cut back to the design side. So we'll just give it a moment until we see that. But this is all about kind of being an efficiency and being productive. It's not about flashy graphics. But when you see the comparison between the animation and the site photography, it's actually a very accurate representation. The final project I'll talk about before handing over to Simon is the one in the bottom left. And this is a huge, huge project in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It has 1.5 million Revit files. Just trying to compute that in my head. So what was required? The first thing that Immerser, who are the UE developer that's responsible for this project, had to do was create an automated data ingestion pipeline. Otherwise, it simply wouldn't be possible. But their model, they're able to show the different disciplines, the architecture, the mechanical, and the structural detail. These guys are the ones that have connected Primavera to show the progress of this project, or the development plans for the project for up until 2030. And what they did is they had large screens to show. They sort of did the board reviews using this environment, but they also created a mobile app to be able to share it to the wider group and the people on site as well.
REST APIs are a really good mechanism to allow that sort of functionality in Unreal Engine. So REST API is essentially, it's using the HTTP protocol, but it allows you to communicate between a client and a server. So you can put in get, post, put, and delete requests, and then you can pull and push information from that server as you see fit. So on the right-hand side, we see an example JSON response. This comes from the server. Once we get that response, we can feed it into a blueprint, and then we can do what we want with that. So we could have a set of variables that declare who can gain access to it, what color something is. In terms of AEC, it could be a maintenance API that you're linking into. So there's all sorts of possibilities, and you'll see that this technology comes up time and time again with a lot of the applications that are developed on the Unreal Engine side. The QR code that I've included here, this links to a snippet that I put online, I think about 2 months ago. But what it does is it links to the flood alleviation stations on the River Thames. So as the water level on the River Thames in London fluctuates, it gives you a precise value, and that's uploaded to the REST API. We can feed that into Unreal Engine, and then we could use that to drive something in Unreal Engine. So if we had a digital replica of the River Thames, for instance, we could change that water level based on that real-world data. So you have weather APIs, you have carbon calculator APIs. There's all sorts out there, plan and application APIs. The other technical aspect that I wanted to fit into this section is pixel streaming. So if we take into account maybe a scenario of a construction site, and you have maybe a really low-powered device, maybe a mobile device or an iPad, and you want to get some really high-fidelity 3D content onto that device, you can use this technology called pixel streaming. So if you think of a streaming solution like Netflix, where you're pulling the frames, the video frames from Netflix, and you're viewing that on your device, what pixel streaming allows you to do is send the interactions that you're making on your device back up to the server so that you're pulling down the video frames from that interactive element. So you can have a game that's running on the cloud and you're just pulling and interacting with that game in real time. And also just a note, Twinmotion Cloud, which is the bolt-on to Twinmotion, you can author your projects from Twinmotion and then send it up to pixel streaming, and then you can send that to up to 100 people concurrently at any one time. So it's really flexible compared to a lot of the options out there. Rob?
Okay, so that's end of the section 2. So the third section, I guess, is where we probably feel a little more at home. You know, the imagery that we're used to seeing coming out of tools like Unreal Engine. So in this, in this space, we see the physical marketing suites that are often controlled either by touch or using the remote control API. The ability to reach wide audience through things like pixel streaming, or to drive an engaged process kind of with your client in the sales suite itself. I think what we see the benefits of this is it helps to sell properties in advance of completion. Reduces the risk of things like empty units, and then configurators is an interesting one. It's what we've seen in automotive. It's an excellent way to upsell someone to additional features or a higher price, and we're seeing that now in apartments and kitchens and those sorts of things, where you can, if you connect it to an ERP or a CRM system, you can get live pricing changes as you configure upgrades and changes. So this is where the flashy graphics do come back. So top left is a project by Spaceform. It's the developer's called Edge. It's Liverpool Street in London. And with the idea here, it was exactly what I just said. They needed to pre-lease 20 floors of the building before they were going to proceed with the project. So they had a dedicated marketing suite and a pixel streaming service for remote sales. They used Cesium to show the context and surrounding areas. And actually, the project on the top right, which is by Somewhere for a developer called Landsec, is actually pretty similar, using a lot of the same sort of techniques to show. But in this case, I think the difference with this project was all about the place, that they were trying to sell a place as opposed to a building. So if any of you are from London or know London, if you're south of the river, it's a little less desirable than being north of the river in the city of London, in the financial district. So in this example, the developer was trying to show, well, actually, it's just across the water. It's just there. So they were using these tools to show its proximity, this site on the South Bank's proximity to the city of London on the North Bank. The final example, the example in the bottom left is actually from Serbia, from a company called Case 3D. They are Serbia's largest, Delta Real Estate is Serbia's largest real estate developer. And this, I think what was nice about this project, and again, it had some similarities with the other two, where you could show views from the apartments. You could also go down to street level. You can see the local area. And in this case, they showed also some of the transport connections, which I know features in the next story as well. But as well, they've embedded the floor plans and CGIs as part of the service. And as a result of this, we learned that they saw a 40% increase in lead generation using this method. And they saw a 35% increase in sales of the apartments as well. So the project we're going to focus on, to spend a little more time on, is developed by Immerser. Is anyone from Immerser here? Hey, guys. So Florida-based Unreal Engine service partner. So this is a super luxury waterfront development. There was a huge amount of interest. So Immerser created a kind of multi-platform deliverable. So they had an immersive room, which we're going to have a look at. They had some large sales and marketing suites, and they also had a mobile app as well. But interestingly, they made more sales in the immersive room than they did in the sales and marketing area, which is not what that was to be expected.
Yep.
Is it you? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so just speaking around, one of the technologies that Immerser use is N-Display. And this is primarily used in the virtual production, media and entertainment space. It's used on films, TV productions. It's very widespread. But Immerser did a really nice job of using it in a different way. So projection mapping, essentially mapping onto the model in the middle of the room, allowing the guests to get really close to the subject matter. So a really impressive use of short throw projectors. Hopefully I've got this right. So it allows those customers to get really close up to see those details. It's very well suited for large-scale installations and collaborative environments where multiple screens or projectors are visible. It essentially allows developers to synchronize multiple instances of UE to render content in real time. So you could have 10, 15, 20 or more different screens that are coordinated together to give you this one bigger picture of what's going on. So a lot of our labs have this set up as a demo suite as well. And the other technology I wanted to touch on was the remote control API. Again, it's primarily a virtual production tool, but I find that this is incredibly helpful across the board, especially for AEC projects. What it allows you to do is to remotely interact with objects and properties across the board. So if you turn on the remote control API window, you then have a small eyelid that's next to all of the properties in Unreal Engine. You can expose all of those, and then on a really simple user interface, you can start to toggle those interactively in one place. So imagine you're setting up a rendition and you don't want to go through 20 different UE menus to get to where you want to go. You could select just a remote control API window, and then you're ready to go. The other good thing about this is that you can link this with a Node.js server and then have this on a web browser. So it could be an iPad device where you're running a custom interface, and then you can have multiple interfaces. So it could be that you have one interface for an architect, one interface for a public consultation, a group of public members there with different interface types. So it's really flexible in the way that you can start to develop this out for multiple needs.
Okay, so the final section we're going to look at is the sort of digital twin operations, metaverse, and live events. So this is kind of on, typically upon completion of the project. The digital twins could obviously give us real-time insights of what's happening with the facility. There's a comprehensive way of connecting to different data sources using things like REST APIs or MQTT. The UI is fully customizable, and it's easy. It's simple to deploy it to multiple devices, mobile devices, terminals, and different things like that. In the metaverse section, it's an interesting way of engaging new audiences and differentiating yourself from the field. And I know, a lot of firms are focusing on kind of doing things a little bit differently. And then in the final section, in live events, again, it's about repurposing assets that have been created earlier on and reusing them later. So in the top left, we obviously got some subtitles for this one, but this project basically is an HP enterprise data center. It was created, the solution was created by a startup called Smart Spatial. Smart Spatial guys here? Hey guys. So I love the comment you made about the X-ray vision in the interview that you did for us, where you said that it's not just about seeing the problem, but it's actually being a step further and seeing where and why. And I think your solution is a great way of getting great insights from that facility. better operations, faster maintenance, smarter decision making. Actually, as well, embedded within this project was real-time sensor data as well. And that, I think what we heard from Smart Spatial also is the ability to integrate that without affecting the performance. Okay, so the top right. So now we're into slightly more niche and funky usage of the engine. Can you just go back up a sec? Yeah. So this is a project in UEFN. It was developed by the architecture firm Heatherwick alongside Spaceform. And the project is Little Island in New York City. And the reason they used Unreal Engine and UEFN in this case was they needed to reach a very diverse audience. They needed to reach, young people, different levels of affluence and all this kind of thing. And they felt like this was the best way to engage rather than just use like a passive walkthrough type workflow. And this was deployed, as I mentioned before, multiple devices. It was deployed to desktops and laptops, phones, and gaming consoles. And one of the interesting things that we learned about this one is that the project actually started off in Twinmotion as the client asked for some sort of general 3D renderings. It was then moved to Unreal Engine and then latterly passed across to UEFN. Okay, so you may recognize the project bottom left. This is the Sphere in Las Vegas. And the Moment Factory worked in collaboration with the rock band Fish, who are famous for never repeating a set. So when they were in the Sphere, what they wanted to do was take that a step further and not only have a unique music set, but also have the fabric of the Sphere, the inside, the look and feel of it change as the music changed. So it's a really, really kind of bleeding edge use of the technology. And then the final project is the very famous UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Obviously, I'm sure you all know, in 2019 it was devastated by a fire. So what happened here was Cosmo AV and Antoine Bourgoin were hired to basically light the cathedral for the reopening, which happened a few months back. So Simon's now going to talk about some of the techniques that were used in this project.
Yep. So the two techniques I'm going to talk about here are megalights and lumen. Cosmo AV, they utilize very heavily the megalights technology that we have now in the latest versions of Unreal Engine. So what megalights allows you to do is it takes away a lot of the problems that we had in the past where if you had too many overlapping light sources, you'd be competing against them and you'd have to go through this really laborious task of setting attenuation radiuses on the light sources, and you'd have to be really sparse with the way that you would set those out in the scene. If you think of an architectural project, though, already in this room we've got, I don't know, maybe about 50 lights. So in a mega light scenario, we don't have to worry so much about that. Unreal Engine is calculating on a per pixel per frame basis, and it's doing all the hard work for us. So Cosmo AV, they utilized megalights technology. It allowed them to have as many different light sources as they wanted to. And Lumen, that's our global illumination technology. This allows us, or allows them, to bounce the light in a very realistic way. So the combination of these two technologies it's not really been marketed as AEC, but it absolutely is fundamental to us.
Well, we've heard a lot of customers tell us how valuable it is for AEC projects.
Yeah, really night and day, the kinds of things that you can start to do when you turn megalights on. If you are using megalights, you'll get around a 200 plus performance increase as well on your scene, not just in runtime, but also in editor. So even if you're just going around and you're configuring your scene from the very start, I'd recommend turning on megalights. The other technologies in use, so photogrammetry. Cosmo AV, they took lots of photos of the sites, and the process of photogrammetry allows you to stitch those photographs together and automatically work out any coincidental angles and overlaps. That brings up a sparse point cloud data set, It's then turned into a dense point cloud data set, then a 3D model, and then a textured 3D model. And that's the progress of photogrammetry. And we can then bring that into Unreal Engine and utilize that in numerous different ways. So we could light it, we can apply physics to it. There's all sorts of really great endpoints for us there. And then Nanite that was introduced with UE5, so UE5's virtualized geometry system. This automatically streams and processes only the data required for any given view. So what they experienced, Cosmo AV experienced, was that they had a 4 million polygon mesh. In the past, they would have had to be a bit careful about how they treated that when it came in. Now they can just bring in these meshes and make sure Nanite is applied to them, and then go through the process of setting up their projection mapping techniques. So it's a really nice example, I think, that we'll see more of going forwards. DMX is not necessarily used by them, but this is one that you should definitely be aware of. If you're working with stadiums or theatres or any sort of live venues, what DMX is, it's digital multiplex, and it's a protocol that's used to control light sources. So if we had different controllable light sources in this room, we could have Unreal Engine running on the same network as it, and then we could use the DMX protocol to control the lights. So where they rotate, what the color values are, what the intensity values are. And if you go to this QR code, we've actually got a really nice previs scene that Moment Factory set up for us using our DMX tools. So if you're working on a performance of any kind, it could be that you work it out in advance in Unreal Engine, and then when you're ready to go and you know that it looks great and the timing's great, you press play, and then you can have that running in your real physical environment. And then finally, I've got OSC. So this stands for Open Sound Control. It's primarily been designed to work with musical software, musical instruments, but really you can use this in any sort of way that you want. So I'd recommend having a look at this in collaboration with an application called Touch OSC. And what Touch OSC allows you to do is make a really simplistic user interface with lots of different buttons that you can configure for different needs. Every time you click on one of those buttons, it can send a message to Unreal Engine, and then you can get that to process some sort of command of your choosing with the power of blueprints. And if you go to the QR code, you'll be able to see some of the documentation for that. Yeah.
Right, well, we're back round to this slide again. So hopefully we were able to help you see that there is value to be found throughout the stages of projects. Hopefully we explain that, digital advances, it doesn't have to tick all of the digital twin boxes to be valuable. And hopefully with Simon's insights and QR codes, you've got some things that you can go away with and work on, and hopefully that will bring value to your business. So hopefully we delivered on that message. And then, Simon, do you want to just do this one?
Yeah, sure. So we have the Epic developer community. I'd really highly recommend you check this out. We have the snippet repository that I mentioned previously, where you can get code for blueprints, C++, materials even. So if you're looking for a particular material configuration, the chances are there's probably somebody that's already done this. We also have community tutorials, a really large repertoire of them, covering all of our ecosystem, tools in our ecosystem. Yeah. Also, we have Epic-led tutorials and courses on the Epic developer community site. So yeah, highly recommend you check that out after this. And Rob,
I was just going to say that. So if any of you guys are interested on the training side, Epic has a bunch of free content, but we also do something called blended learning, which is pre-recorded classes combined with live Q&A. So it's a really nice kind of hybrid approach to training. So you can consume the recorded classes in your own time and then have a schedule of live Q&A with an Epic instructor to go through and make sure that you learn what you needed to learn. And that's a very popular and very cost-effective training offering from Epic. So if anyone's interested in that, you can catch me afterwards. But we also then, for those of you or for companies that want more tailored or in-person training, then we do the live training as well, but that is a lot more expensive. And then finally, on the pro support side, so that's the rebranded name of Epic, of UDN. So this is Epic staff and approved partners providing our highest level of technical support for those people that require it. It's an addition. If you need to buy a subscription for Unreal, then it's an additional cost on top of the subscription. And with that, we are ready for your questions.